Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview sponsored by Infostar IT Solutions. I'm Mark Owen, owner and editor of PunchlineGloucester.com. And today my special guest, if I can spit it out, is Jon Lock. He's a comic writer based in Gloucester, co-founder of the independent publisher Big Punch Studios. Not big at all, it's Punch Studios. Hi, John. Welcome to Punchline Talks.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, can you tell us, please? Can you tell us a little bit about Punch Studios and what you actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. Big Punch Studios began life probably about 13 years ago. In an initial idea, I was always interested in writing and getting books out. And as I started on my kind of creative career and learned a little bit more about how the UK comics industry worked, um, I connected with people who shared a similar kind of goal. So most notably, my friend and colleague Nick Angel, with whom I still work, his partner at the time, Ali, my then girlfriend, now wife Lucy, and the four of us, we were all creators, and we realized that forming a business, which was never a goal, I'd never really set out to be a business owner, was was a way of building a better engine to allow us to get our comics and then games and stuff out into the world. I think we're creators at heart. I'd probably be the first to say that we're probably terrible business people by extension of that, because we're too focused on making the creative stuff rather than actually running the business. But yeah, it's been a very interesting learning curve the last kind of a decade or so we've been doing this, balancing those two sides, really balancing, trying to make really nice, interesting stories and games that we're right in the thick of it doing it, while also learning how to run a business in the first place, which was again not something we trained for, and yeah, then just picking up all these interesting logistic, financial skills that I never imagined I'd have. I mean, I certainly starting out, I never imagined we'd be looking into shipping abroad. Which was a big leap for us, or even manufacturing abroad, as we did with some of our later games. And then the next thing you know, you're doing this on a semi-regular basis, and it just feels a bit more normal.
It's funny, isn't it? You're right. I talk to so many business people who love doing the main job, and then suddenly you've got all these other things. You've got to do the marketing, the accounts, the packaging, you name it. We're all doing it.
Oh,
We're sweeping the floor and sharpening the pencils there, I'm sure, and making the coffee, and
oh,
and then your
exactly. Yeah,
partner's involved as well.
yeah, indeed. I mean, we all have a various, different creative disciplines that we bring to the table. So I'm a writer, so the majority of the scripts for our stories are something I put together. But then my wife Lucy, she's a writer. She's also a letterer. So when it comes to comics, the simple art of applying the speech bubbles to the page is a skill in its own right that's often overlooked. And then Nick, he's the artist of the group. I mean, comics being like a visual medium, we'd be nothing without his art. And Ali is a filmmaker as well. And then on top of that, so we have this kind of broad church of skills. The four of us are, we were always passionate about games, and so game design became a big part of the things we brought to the table. And for example, one of the card games we made, Sandwich Masters, which is a very daft game about building sandwiches and sabotaging your opponents. That's often like the best example of what the four of us could do as a team. It was really one of the most kind of equal projects we did, where everybody brought something to it, which was lovely.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I actually have a picture of a sandwich. Can you see that there? The sandwich
Uh,
one. Or can you
I
see
I
the
apologize, Mark. It's like I can see a different cool image, but I can't see the sandwich masters.
how about that now?
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yes.
No. Okay, so that's your game. Obviously, it's been on Amazon. So you guys all put this together. You're a big gamer. I love games myself.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. No, comics were where we kind of cut our teeth. But when we weren't making comics, which was very much like our passion, our vocation. The games are how you relax in principle. And this is way back in 2015, not long after we incorporated. We figured, oh well, we'd really like to make a card game. We didn't know the first thing about it, but we knew what we liked as a game. And I think the kind of genesis of Sandwich Masters was being stuck in a very long car journey where we were all starving. And we joked about, oh, wouldn't it be funny if, you were making sandwiches and then if you were using subpar ingredients, maybe you could bribe the health inspector by putting some money in the sandwich. And then we figured, well, nobody's nobody's there to say we can't do it. So even though we didn't know how to make a game, we just gave it a shot. And I think it was September 2015. We took it to Kickstarter because obviously we've done a lot of crowdfunding campaigns over the years to get our comics and stuff off the ground. And yeah, and again, kind of going in, not really knowing anything, kind of hoping for the best. We hit our funding target. We were very lucky. We ended up being one of Kickstarter's global projects of the day back in September 2015, which was an astonishing stroke of luck that we couldn't really have planned for. But that really helped kind of get us across the finish line and elevate the project a little, further than it would have done otherwise, because we've always done things on a bit of a budget and, we didn't really have a marketing slush fund or anything like that. So word of mouth, kind of going to conventions, meeting people, newsletters, everything I don't know, it's a bit buzzwordy, but we've always done things on kind of like grassroots level because we didn't really have the funds to do it any other way.
Yeah, I was going to say actually, how the hell do you launch something like that? What would you say was the biggest lesson that you learned getting a game like that out?
Oh, my life. It's funny, isn't it? Like you look back and you think, well, we made so many small mistakes along the way, but they were all kind of interesting. Gosh, what did we learn? I mean, a very interesting thing we
But
discovered is
sorry,
that
let's
we
start with those. Sorry, let's start with those little small mistakes as well.
oh, what did we do? Well, one of the things we learned is that it's actually very hard. This is a surprising discovery. It's very hard to find a UK-based manufacturer who can handle all the logistics of putting a board game together. It's the printing isn't so hard because again, if it's a flat surface, most printers can put ink on it. But one of the challenges is having a factory that's set up to assemble all the necessary pieces.
Yeah.
So our card game, Sandwich Masters, is relatively simple in that it's made up of cards, an instruction booklet, and then a hard, rigid cardboard box to keep it all together. And you might find maybe a facility that could do the box, a facility that could do the cards, but putting them together was the challenging part. And then you think that some of the big board games now, I mean, it's such a it's come a long way from Monopoly, basically. Some of them might have thousands of independent parts, ranging from cards to tokens to figurines. And what you're paying for at the manufacturing now is it's more the assembly of all those pieces. And so when we first printed the game, we printed it with a local printer who did a fantastic job. We were very happy with the work they did. But by their own admission, they'd never printed a card game before. And so it was little things like the paper stock for the cards was a lot thicker than an average playing card, but the box itself was a lot thinner. And so we had a lot of very enthusiastic people who loved it, but also some connoisseurs of games were going like, oh, I don't like the way these cards feel. And yeah, we found the more people knew about games, the less they liked it. But people who cared more about sandwiches were a bit more forgiving, I think. And then it was later when we did a big reprint in 2019, I want to say. And that's when we took the plunge and we went with a Chinese card game manufacturer. The big players basically being the European uh, game manufacturers and the Chinese factories because they just have such an infrastructure for it. And of course, that comes with additional hurdles and stresses where, you've got to, you're dealing with a quality control team on the other side of the world. You hope it lives up to the standard you're trying to hit, and then you put it on a boat and you cross your fingers and it disappears for a few months and you just hope it turns up at the other end. Um, so yeah, but I think yeah, I think it was I wouldn't do anything differently looking back at that, but it was interesting that the leap from kind of charmingly rustic, shall we say, to looking to striving for a degree of professionalism that would match some of the major publishers. That was a hurdle for us as a small company because we didn't have the bigger infrastructure that would allow us to kind of spread the load. But we did manage it. We made it, and we're very happy with the reprint. And we've since done an expansion where it's just getting easier and easier now because we know the ins and outs of well, even little things like product safety codes, CE marks, UKCA marks, import, customs, all that sort of thing. I mean, I'll be honest, the funny thing is, Mark, I set out wanting to write comics, and now suddenly I find myself doing all this kind of stuff as well, which I do kind of enjoy because, it's one thing to have an idea, it's quite another thing to kind of take it to market now, I suppose. So everything we do, I think it's worked, it's exhausting, but it's made us potentially better creators because whenever we have an idea now, we know we're staring down the barrel of, well, it's all fun and games now, but in 9 months we've got to print it and ship it and get it out there. So yeah, it
And
makes
you've
us
got to
pause
finance,
before leaping blindly into it.
and you've got to finance it as well. Obviously, all
Oh,
that time you're doing your comics writing and drawing, which we'll come to very shortly. But at the same time, you've got four people you've got to pay, and you're paying out
well,
for these.
well, that's interesting because yeah, no, it's a very good point. I mean, to be honest, like the the money side of things has always been, we've always done things on a budget. We've always done things as leanly as we can, not because we're cutting corners, but simply because like the margins are always so thin, particularly in comics, but also particularly in UK comics where we don't have the industry and market that say America does or Japan does or Europe does. So we we basically realized that we would rather control a very small empire than aim for kind of global kind of domination, really. So we kind of made peace with it and then become happier by going, we're not going to grow infinitely because that we just don't, we're not that kind of company. We're a micro business. I mean, there's four of us in the team, no employees beyond the directors. And for the longest time, for over a decade, we've had day jobs as well, kind of keeping this together. It's only in the last few years that Nick and I have gone full time as creatives, living off our writing, living off our art, while at the same time also kind of overseeing the printing and distribution of our stuff. So it's a strange life, but not really one I imagined. But so someone asked me the other day, said, "What's it like having your dream job?" And it actually took me a minute to go like, "Oh heck, yeah, I guess I do. I've just been too busy to notice, really."
I think a lot of people like that, isn't it? It's a bit like being an actor. They're not on the stage the whole time.
No.
There's a long time where they're unemployed and they're stacking shelves, working in Tesco or whatever, or working in a pub. I want to talk to you very briefly about your Afterlife comics. So I'm going to bring that up on screen.
Oh,
Hopefully, it will come up straight away as well. So let's go here. Let's have a look. Can you see that? Hopefully, you're not looking at
I
Punchline, but
can.
you're
No,
looking.
I can. It's wonderful. Yes.
Goodness, technology is wonderful. So this is Afterlife. Can you tell us about the premise first of all, and hopefully we'll flick through few of the pictures.
For sure, yeah. So this is my main series. I've worked on a number of titles over the years, but this is where I began, and this is my mission. I have to finish this series now. It's been going for about 12 years. But yeah, this is Afterlife Inc., which is the tale of a con artist named Jack Fortune, who dies, discovers an afterlife in chaos, and then takes over and runs it like a business. Um, which is perhaps the beginning and end of my business acumen. But yeah, I self-published the first book back in February 2012, and this is prior to the existence of Big Punch as a company. And yeah, and since then there have been seven now volumes. So some people are very picky about the distinction between a comic and a graphic novel. I don't really see the distinction if I'm honest, but for me, I think of a graphic novel as having, a spine, like being quite thick. And so, yeah, there have been seven graphic novels in the main series, um, plus a bonus graphic novel, which was the how the company started, oddly enough. Nick was making his own comic back in 2012, 2013. And when I met him, I was impressed by his book. He was impressed by mine. And we decided to do a crossover between the two books. And having foolishly left it in canon, we realized we created a shared continuity, and thus it was the only next logical leap was to form a company off the back of it. But yeah, so seven volumes to date. For the 10-year anniversary, I collected the whole run as two massive hardbacks, which I did a big Kickstarter for, and yeah, and then finished shipping a few years ago, and since then, yeah, the last year, big project has been bringing Volume 7 to print, which was made possible thanks to a National Lottery project grant, a project that also allowed me to deliver free comic making workshops to children in Gloucester who, well, to be honest, like, it's not the kind of opportunity that normally comes that way. Comics are a bit obscure at the best of times, and Gloucester as an area doesn't normally get that kind of strange culture coming to them. So yeah, that's a really cool opportunity actually.
And it's not being funny. Does Afterlife make you a lot of like make you a lot of money, or is it labour and love,
A
John?
very,
You know,
very, very much a labor of love. I think in the well, a case in point would be, and I think we might touch on this in a minute because I have mentioned it to you, but in the last year or so, Nick and I signed a publishing deal with Macmillan Children's Books, and that is now perhaps already just at the get-go the first I've made more money, I think, straight up for my writing from that than I have done in the previous decade of making this book. I mean, I have fans, I have followers, but again, this is where I think I do think of myself as quite a bad businessman sometimes because so much of the money I've made over the years has gone back into producing more of the product, and it's kept the lights on, and it's allowed us to fund more and more ambitious projects. But it's never been enough to say, I don't know, go have a nice holiday on or treat myself on. But because I'm so kind of work focused and working on the next book and the next book, I think even that said, I think it gave me a lot of power to make new things. Didn't give me a lot of power to relax and enjoy myself, but it has allowed me to make more and more cool things, which I think is quite a lucky position to be in the UK as a comic creator because it's quite hard to kind of make a career out of it, like I say.
I was going to say to you. So, how did you actually get the book deal itself? Did they come over to you, or did you pitch to the company to Macmillan Books?
Yeah, so this is the bizarre thing. As long as I've been working in comics, there's been the I guess the dream, if you will, was to be plucked out of obscurity, discovered by the hand of fate. And we've been doing it long enough to know that that probably wasn't going to happen, and so we were focused on making our own stuff and building our own fan base. And then, astonishingly, after all these years of kind of just doing it our own way, we had a random encounter at a comic convention where a couple of very, very nice people came by the table. They liked the look of our work. We always try to look professional and present ourselves well. I think it's why our books do engage with people. And yeah, it turned out they were editors from Macmillan Children's Books, and they really liked our stuff. Comics are a bit of a growth area for the traditional publishing industry, which is quite different to the comic publishing industry. And they're really keen to get into children's books, children's comics, which are exploding. So yeah, one thing led to another, and they asked Nick and I to come up with some ideas for some new children's titles, which we did. And yeah, we somehow landed a four-book publishing deal, and that quickly escalated into us signing with an agency. So we're now represented by the Creative Artists Agency. And yeah, for the last year or so, we're locked into quite quite an involved publishing schedule where we're producing a new 208-page graphic novel every 8 months, and currently working on book two. And yeah, books one and two will be hitting shelves in America and the UK in 2026, and books three and four will be following in 2027. So this is an incredible opportunity. It's a very interesting time for us and quite a new experience having done this all ourselves for so long. It's very, very nice actually to have, well, dare I say, some professionals behind us, kind of promoting and helping us reach a new audience. It's lovely.
And I suppose not being funny with the rise of streaming sites and now turning video games into big television shows. They've gone through all the Marvels. They're looking for creative outlets. So who knows? Who knows? We could have your characters maybe on the big screen very soon.
Well,
Is that the ultimate dream? See them
well,
come alive as a
it is funny. I think because it's very hard to describe to anyone on the outside because the comic industry is furiously strange, even in the regions where it's doing well. And I think a lot of comics are created as, they lose money. They lose money almost as soon as they're made. Marvel don't make money on their comics, but it's an IP. It's a way of generating intellectual property, which feeds the movies, and the movies in turn feed the comics. So I think a lot of comics are made as a kind of backdoor pitch to being a movie. It's a lot easier to sell an idea if it exists as a comic first. Um, we do very much love the medium. We always have done. And I think, you know, there'd have to be something in it, or we wouldn't have been doing it for so long. So yeah, while I would love to see my characters adapted, and there have been a few discussions had behind the scenes about a few things like that. Um, I I do actually just love comics as a medium. So yes, I would love an adaptation, but I'd never like to abandon the books because for me, it's pretty much one of the greatest art forms I can imagine.
It's funny, I produced my Punchline magazine. What people don't realize is a bit like this. I've got to lean over here. Is that you actually start with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing there in there, and you turn it into a 160 page, or like you've got 208-page comic book, which is quite a phenomenal amount of work. And I don't think people sometimes realize, you've got to write the story, and then secondly, your partner there has to draw it up, and then someone does the bubbles, and that's one hell of a lot of work. I'd love to come to your studio and see it properly if you don't mind.
Oh, you'll have to, yeah, we'll have to come visit at some point, see the process. But yeah, no, it's an oddly collaborative medium. I mean, even the new After I Think book, we had every one page has been touched by one artist who does the pencils, another artist who does the colors. I'm writing it, someone's lettering it. So every page you see has been touched by four people. And, some projects might have a fifth who's doing the inks as well. Like, it's very hard to do it on your own. I think it's an exercise in fostering good working relationships, I think, because, yeah, if you can't get people on board, I don't think anything would happen.
So were you always, as a kid, were you always into drawing? Then let's go back a little bit further, if that's okay. So where are you from originally, John? You from
Uh,
Gloucestershire?
yeah, just outside Gloucester. I grew up in Hynham, kind of in the kind of mid 80s. And yeah, like I think from the moment I first, I think like a lot of kids growing up in the UK, the Beano, the Dandy, these were standards. And then as I got older, I started to discover kind of like these weird American comics as I thought of them, kind of the superheroes and the like. And then oddly enough, I discovered that a lot of like when I became aware of the names of the people making these comics, I mean, that was a big kind of leap in my brain to realize that, like, oh, these don't just appear out of nowhere. There's people drawing them, there's people writing them, and weirdly enough, a lot of them were from the UK. Like a lot of the greatest kind of creators working in American comics were British, and it was incredible. And I kind of, even though my training, if you will, my degree is in biology, I went down the more respectable science routes. I knew that storytelling and comics, and it had to be comics for me. That was always going to be the thing that would make me happy. That was just almost like a calling, I suppose.
So I'm going to bring up this little photograph that we staged earlier. Hopefully you'll see it now. There we go there. So there's you, John. Can you see that one?
I can, yes.
Listen, mate, I just want to say that yeah, your moustache was better than my moustache. I don't know how old you were, but you look like 20. Were you 20, 18?
Yeah,
What
I
age were you?
was 21, I want to say, 21.
Yeah, that's the sort of same moustache I had at 21. I regret every single photograph. I thought you were very brave sending me that. Although it's
Well,
a better
thank you.
moustache than that.
Well, we were talking about this just before we started recording, and the entire exercise of finding a photo of myself from my youth was really it was just a tour of some of the worst hairstyles I've ever seen. It's quite humbling.
It's funny, at least you had hair. Most of the time, mine was completely shaved bald, really, being a bit of a mod and a punk and all the rest of it. So, anyway, so that's you as a younger guy. What school did you go to?
I went to Newent Comprehensive, just on the edge of the forest, I suppose.
I know Newton very well. It's great school, actually, Newton High School. So you did all that, and then you obviously met your partners and moved on from there. I've got one other picture I want to just bring up, which is the Hercules stuff. Tiny Hercules. So let me bring this up. So how did I mean Hercules seemed to be everywhere. I didn't realise that Hercules was so big
Yeah,
for a little guy.
it's well, indeed, for a hero who's the size of a jam jar, yeah, his presence kind of looms large. Yeah, so Tiny Hercules is the new series of children's graphic novels we're working on, and yeah, I'd like to say it was entirely planned, and we were like capitalizing on the market penetration and popularity of Hercules, but no, it was just a daft little idea that made us laugh, and Nick was talking about a tiny version of Hercules who is only a few inches tall. And originally we were thinking like, oh, well, he's like Hercules, but he's also a homunculus, which is like a small person. So we were going to call him Homuncules. Um, while the publishers loved the idea, they thought, well, I think a kid might struggle with the name of knowing how to pronounce that. So he became Tiny Hercules, which we absolutely loved. And yeah, and the whole premise is about Tiny Hercules, who's the world's tiniest, mightiest hero, has been kicked out of Tiny Olympus after ruining one too many of Tiny Zeus's parties, and now he's crash landed in a little village called Chutney on Toast, where if he wants to get back from our world to Tiny Olympus, he has to complete 12 legendary tasks, but he has no idea what what legendary entails, and so chaos ensues basically. And well, I mean, at the very least, we're making ourselves laugh while working on it. So I don't know if kids are going to like it, but there's an audience of two who are already impressed. So
Well, I can't wait to see it, mate. I love the idea already. Unfortunately, we're already running out of time, John. So I've got to ask you, first of all, before I ask you for your top three business tips, okay? In your CD player, in your car or radio, what's the latest track that you listen to? What's the latest album you bought or CD?
oh, what am I
If you
listening
like
to?
me, you're old enough to buy CDs rather than iMusic when I
No,
go.
we've recently pivoted back to having an actual CD player in the house. But no, I what have I listened to recently? I've been listening to a lot of the band Everything, who I
So I'm gonna
feel
write that down. Everything. What? So everything.
Everything, who
Okay.
have been skirting around the edge of my listening for a while. A lot of my friends are very into them, and in the last few weeks, while I've been renovating the studio and putting on this exhibition, I've needed some music on, and yeah, it's really good. It's very complex, you know, melodies that don't go where you expect, but yeah, they're very good.
Maybe it just reaches your sort of creative side, perhaps, that you've
I
obviously
think
got there.
you've got to be a little weird, haven't you, to kind of do what we do.
I think you do have to be that weird, especially trying to make some money out of it, mate. It's very
Oh, my life,
difficult.
yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's all we run out of time for, John. So, look, what are your top three business tips, please, sir?
Okay, well, literally, these have been said to me in my life, and they have changed my approach to making stuff. The first one is there is nothing more overrated than a good idea, by which I mean, as I took it to mean, it's great to have ideas. You really have to do something about them at the same time. Second piece of advice was success is being quietly excellent for years, which I do try and take to heart. The quality kind of shines through when you eventually do get lucky. And then the third thing would be, I guess, be good at what you do, but be lucky as well. You can never really control when the lightning's going to strike, but if you're ready for it and you're professional and you can stand by the quality of your work, yeah, I think you'll go far.
John Lock, thanks ever so much for talking to Punchline Talks. I really appreciate your time. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Infostar IT Solutions. And remember, it's all in the punchline. Grab you all very soon. Bye. I don't know why I said grab you all very soon. I don't mean grab you all very soon, but I meant to say bye bye. Catch you all very soon.